All right, hello everybody. My name is Bisevac. Thank you for coming here today. A brave crowd. Can I mention how many? Well, less than 10. We were supposed to have a room full of people, but we are in a siege-like state, and those brave that came, welcome here, and everybody online. This will be broadcasted nationwide, and Gerald said probably worldwide, whoever can tune in into YouTube. We were supposed to have really a full day seminar today on functional medicine and kind of create certain mini school, but we are doing just a critical update on coronavirus. And hopefully we're going to present a view that is a little bit different and that will make you feel that you didn't waste your time listening to this. A little bit different angle. I talked to a doctor yesterday who said, you know what, I'm not going to come. I heard everything there is to hear about coronavirus. You know, I know everything. Everybody feels an expert. So hopefully we're going to present something today that you have not heard yet that has a little bit different angle. And I may surprise you with the stuff I will present today and stuff I will not cover, because we will have continuation of this in various forms in webinars and a seminar a month from now. So we will have a monthly series. We will have a monthly series every month, presenting a different topic and creating a mini school on functional medicine. So there is a link underneath YouTube video where you can sign in for the lecture in April and so on. So just a few days ago, I saw this title online and I thought it was a joke. You know, coronavirus conference gets canceled because of coronavirus. I said, wow, they're joking, you know. Then I realized it's not a joke. It really got canceled. And then I don't watch TV. I watch occasionally some good movies, but I really try to stay away from panic media. And then I went to some store last week and saw for a few minutes, just maybe 5 minutes, this press conference, and I got panicky. Just 5 minutes of watching. There is this like a really high-pitched media. Oh, this many cases died, and this is what's going on. And you felt like something is going to happen that is so big, so great. A war, you know, Pearl Harbor. All over again. We're going to be attacked and destroyed, and there won't be society anymore as we know it. And this reminded me of event in my home just 2 weeks ago. One of my daughters, who is in elementary school, forgot to do all her homework, which rarely happens. She's usually very diligent, and she lost one piece of paper, and she was sleepy. It was late at night, about 8:30, and you know how kids get cranky when they're sleepy? And she went to this kind of retroactive mode, a little bit kind of tantrum state that is more akin to younger kids, and she started crying. Oh no! And my teacher is gonna, criticize me, and kids are not gonna like in school, and they're gonna look at me down at my homework, and they're gonna take me out of school, and they're gonna kick me out. And she went on, and I got kind of mesmerized almost with that intensity of just lost paper, and she's doing her homework all the time, and I was kind of watching almost in amusement, although I wanted to really be sympathetic. And what else is going to happen? And what else is going to happen? And she went on and on with this incredible doomsday scenario. What's going to happen because she lost a piece of paper? I said, are you done now? Then I hugged her and she calmed down, and next day everything was fine. So I feel that the whole world is in a tantrum state. And I cannot believe. And it really made me scared for a while and made me want to investigate and see what's going on. And I said, okay, should we really be scared? Should I be scared? What should we do? Who is right here? I'm going to approach this as a journalist, as an investigative journalist. Let's really collect all the facts. And by the way, as a journalist, I will tell you that I feel that most journalists these days are failing, really getting grade F. There is so much panic. And if somebody should stay calm, there should be journalistic profession. We should stay calm and present facts and not create this panic. Actually, one of the videos I saw was this anchor lady on a major TV news, and she was interviewing one of these people from the cruise that got coronavirus, and she was coming with this high-pitched noise. And how are you doing, my dear? You must be sick. Oh, you endure so much. And the lady on the other side is I'm fine. Everything is okay. And she was smiling and looked very healthy. I really felt it was fake video, that somebody's pretending. And then I realized after listening to 5-6 cases, everybody was responding, no, I'm okay, kind of like a mild flu. Last year flu was even worse than this. I said, okay, something is wrong. So this anchor lady is coming with such a almost the fear. And if anybody came to you with a kind of fear on anything, you always get scared. So what is really the facts? How do we approach this from factual journalistic perspective? And I'm going to ask you a very pertinent question. Whatever your opinion is, are you willing to change your mind? After you listen to all the facts we will present today, are you willing to honestly change your mind? One thing that I respect highly in any individual is the ability to really change your mind given the facts. And to say, okay, yeah, I get it, I was wrong. Maybe you were right, but are you willing to change your mind? And I respect highly an individual's ability to grow and change and to admit sometimes when things are really not that way. And how about as a society we just kind of have this cathartic moment, catharsis, and say, okay, let's see if we need to change our stance on this whole paranoia going on. So I'm approaching this from functional medicine perspective.
I'm getting some feedback, Ray, so I'm going to try something.
Okay, we're going live, so we have to get a little bit tuning here.
I'm just shutting down everything. It's not PowerPoint.
It's not loading.
It's echoing. It's like it's picking up an extra mic.
So I'm approaching this from a journalistic perspective, and I'm approaching this from functional medicine perspective. Functional medicine is looking at facts. We're looking what are really the facts, not just what is the given protocol by higher authority. We're looking what is the cause of a disease. We're trying to assemble the picture. We're trying to be kind of medical detectives. Let's see what is behind. One of the things I hear most often complaints from a lot of patients, a lot of clients, you know, I went to my doctor and he just doesn't want to listen to my story. He just says, take this medicine and that's it. Is there anybody who is trying to connect the dots? So in functional medicine, we're trying to connect the dots. We're trying to see the cause and effect. We're trying to understand the mechanism. What is the mechanism behind this disease? We're trying to ask logical questions. It is unbelievable how many times things will be resolved if you just ask a logical question. Now, what is missing here? What is the mechanism, how this came into place? We're doing interdisciplinary approach. So we're not looking just, you know, kidneys for kidney's sake. What is going on with connection between kidneys and liver and other organs in the body? We're looking at the function. That's why it's called functional medicine. We're looking what is the normal function of this organ or cell, and how do we restore the function? What's going on? In this case of coronavirus, how does coronavirus work? How does it attach to the cell? What does it do to the body? What are the facts? Let's not go into paranoia. Let's look at the facts. What's going on with this virus? Should we really be afraid? And then finally, what is the solution? So we're going to look at all the stuff today: facts, cause, mechanism, solution. And my approach has always been what I'm going to present here: clarity. You know, I love science. As I said, I love to be investigative and detective, and I have done a lot of stuff in my life school-wise, but I like to have clarity. I like to have a large picture. And hopefully today after this lecture, you're going to have this large picture and really nice clarity what's going on. I like to have facts. But more than anything else, I like to have practical, successful outcome. I have heard so many incredible lectures in functional medicine and other medicine and all kinds of places, and people leave the lecture room and says, wow, that was amazing. But it was a little bit over my head, you know? So what did you learn? I don't know. The guy's smart. Okay? But what did you take away? The guy is really smart. So I really will do my best today not to be smart and over your head, but to be so practical that any of you will 100% understand exactly what's going on, where we're going, and not shoot over your head. Yet deeply understand the problem at hand. One of my favorite statements is by Albert Einstein: make things as simple as possible, but not any simpler than that. Isn't it beautiful? I'm going to try to make things as simple as possible today, but not any simpler than that. Just enough that we truly understand the subject at hand and have practical solution that will give you a true peace of mind, but not any simpler than that. So simple outline. We're going to talk and look at the current state and facts. Again, I'd like to have this clarity, a large picture. What is the governmental and mainstream medical approach and response today? We're in crisis, obviously, and my proposed solution. And at the end, I really want you to be the judge and tell me, do you really feel this makes sense or not? And let me know. The current state of affairs is, this is staggering. I mean, this is staggering. We had a real crisis in the past in the United States many times. We have lost $4 trillion in losses just in the last couple of months. Can you even wrap your head around it? 4 trillion. Worldwide, $12 trillion. Even the crisis of 2008-9 was not that staggering, that fast, that abrupt, and that vicious as this right now. I just found online a case of random person, Danielle Skinny. She's a patient in Boston. She personally spent $35,000 to treat her coronavirus case. She survived. She's okay. You know, nothing happened. It was, even in her opinion, like a flu. But she spent $35,000. Could we do this less expensive? Do we have to be in this siege crisis? The world is in a tantrum. My daughter being in a tantrum one night for her homework is one thing. But when you have the whole world in a tantrum, it's a little bit problematic, right? We are regressing way too much. Is it really worth it? Now, if it's worth it, I understand. If you have a cataclysm coming, end of the world, I get it. But the question is it really necessary? The world is in a tantrum and we are not 8-year-olds. Panic. Almost war-like state. Do you have this sense? You go around the street, everything is silent. You feel it is about to have attack from aliens. I don't know, some kind of Star Wars. Terrible. Hoarding, empty stores. I have never seen this in the United States. Empty stores. I have seen somewhere worldwide traveling in poor countries, you know, but empty stores. And very interestingly, why I ask you, are you willing to change your minds? Two polarized views. Almost like we have Republicans and Democrats and they're constantly bickering and fighting like an incredible war going on. We have now with coronavirus. When I present the case among some people that they should not panic, how there's a solution, some people almost take it as if you're taking it too lightly. Like, really, you don't understand, this is serious, you gotta be afraid, you know? And I said, no, I'm not taking this lightly. It's not that I'm not disregarding this. Yes, it's a serious virus. Yes, there is a problem. But do we have to have $12 trillion loss and be in this tantrum? Is this necessary, right? So we have a view of people taking it maybe too lightly. I don't care about anything. But we have definitely two polarized views on this stuff. And I believe there is a way to live life, even as a country, where we may have some controlled quarantine, some approach, and still not be in this panicky state. And I guess TV and the media is contributing to this incredible siege. So this was just the last week. Illinois coronavirus case total jumps to 288. You could be next, governor says. How do you feel about that, right? 288 cases, and you could be next. Wow, me? You know, like I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be tortured. I'm going to put nails in my, you know, this is scary. And I see this occasionally. And I had somebody I talked to last week who had cancer, stage 4. And in 4 months, she went to full remission according to an oncologist. And she went through the whole cancer ordeal and chemotherapy and other stuff she was doing and went into remission with joy because I kind of convinced her to have joy and take it easy. And now she's coming, oh, I don't know how we're going to survive this coronavirus. Oh, I'm afraid, because of listening to media like this. She went through stage 4 cancer, survived, is in remission according to her oncologist, and is now totally panicky. How are we going to survive coronavirus? Yet I asked her, do you know anybody who has coronavirus? No. One of my doctor's friends posted on Facebook, does anybody know somebody personally who has coronavirus? Nobody knows anybody. She survived stage 4 cancer and she's afraid of this. I'm not saying we should take it lightly, so don't get me wrong, but this fear, you could be next. Wow, me? You know, can you leave me alone? It's a lot of fear. So based on this fear, based on this pressure, we started hearing lately these 18 months. Anybody else heard here 18 months? Mm-hmm. 18 months, 18 months. And I was wondering, where is this 18 months coming from? 18 months. Tough measures to stem the coronavirus outbreak could be in place for 18 months, scientists say. And this is funny when they insert this scientists say, right? Wow. We have to bow, scientists say. But let's look, where does this 18 months come from? Are there maybe scientists who disagree with this? And when we investigate this in a detective way a little bit, we find some interesting stuff that came from Imperial College of London. Imperial College of London. So this college actually came with this information. Their scientists came with this, about 18 months. But if you look at this Imperial College of London, you're going to see they're extremely heavy bias toward vaccines and development of vaccines. There are 3 departments in this school, in this college, and one of them is vaccine initiative. There is 3 departments, but they're all heavily into vaccine development research, and they came to a conclusion that it's going to take about 18 months to develop a vaccine. And according to this scientist, for this heavily vaccine-oriented college, we're going to be crisis for 18 months, and they decided we're going to be quarantined and scare everybody to death for 18 months until vaccine gets developed. Now, I understand this is their view. We can respect that. But then, New York Times, just, I believe it was last week, revealed unclassified information that was not meant for public, but leaked. And they reported on that USA government took this as fact. One single college, they had one single opinion that many scientists do not agree with. USA government took this as fact. Look at this. This is the leaked information. This is actually a government document that was not supposed to be published, but it got published. You see the title, U.S. Government COVID-19 Response Plan. And I believe you're going to be as shocked and staggered as I am reading this. Can you read from your seats? In the absence of facts, planning assumptions represent information deemed true. Is this stunning to you? My 8-year-old can have a tantrum, but do I want my government to go into tantrum and to say, in the absence of facts, we're going to decide to assume that panic is the right way? That's what they're saying. Look at other highlighted stuff. The following planning assumptions assisted in the development of an operational environment for this plan. Wow! You're taking assumption, you're making the whole government plan based on assumption, and take it as facts, and then you're going to search scientists say that, and scare the whole nation, and lose $12 trillion worldwide. Something doesn't sound right. This is absence of facts, assumed we're taking to make an action based on this assumption. And assumption is pandemic will last 18 months or longer. They could include multiple waves of illness. Now you're going to see later on, I'm going to present more of this stuff. You know what is the truth? It will not last 18 months. It will probably last forever. Does this sound panicky? Yet it's not as scary as it seems. Because we have influenza every single year. You know the viruses never go away. They become latent, we developed immunity, and there was a lot of discussion, do we develop immunity to COVID virus? I'm going to present some scientific facts here. But can we just calm down as adults, as scientists, and take a look at the facts? No, it's not going to go away in 18 months. It's going to go forever probably. And no, you do not have to be afraid of that. And no, we do not need to be quarantined for 18 months for that, to wait for the vaccines to come. So this would be almost a joke. It would be almost like a stunning, watching some YouTube video, wondering how somebody can be so dumb. But this is on a governmental level, making plan and scaring the whole nations based on assumptions, not facts. And they even admit that we don't have facts. Well, I believe there is a calmer, more rational, and more intelligent way to deal with this. Assumption versus fact. Just to quote what I just read. These planning assumptions assisted us in development of the plan. $12 trillion questions. Do we need this panic? This is not $1 million question. This is a $12 trillion question. Do we need this panic? Could we have resolved this with $1 billion? I think we could. Okay, so I said I'm a journalist. Let's look at statistics. Let's look at the facts. Do not go into panic. You're not going to be kicked out of school, okay? For this stuff. Coronavirus cases, 270. This is the latest statistics as of last night. I checked it out, okay? Based on governmental information. 276,000 cases worldwide. USA close to 20,000. Okay, a lot. I agree. That's 11,000 worldwide. USA 275. Recovered 91,000. Others in the process of recovery, we have greatest majority to recover, well over 90% recover. Actually, 98, 99% recover. Some take longer. So these are the statistics. These are facts, without dealing with panic. Comparison. Coronavirus, 20,000 cases. We're looking at United States, right? Because I have better data on that. We have a flu cases. This is a CDC data. This is not my stuff. This is Center for Disease Control, CDC governmental organization. 34 to 40 million, 49 million influenza cases this year. How does it compare? 20,000 to roughly 40 million cases. 350,000 to 650, let's round it up to 500,000. 500,000 hospitalization. Because they're talking how hospitals will be overwhelmed, and they will be, of course, if there's a news stuff. So I agree that that's a problem. So this is all CDC data. Deaths. Coronavirus, we have a 275. Sounds a lot if you emphasize that too much, right? Flu, 20 to 52,000 deaths just this season alone. We're not talking last year, just this season alone. Let's say 30,000. How does 30,000 compared to 275? Medical errors, people dying from medical errors. John Hopkins research showed $250,000 dying every year from medical error. And this was reported in British Medical Journal. Now, after this was reported a couple of years ago, there was this uproar in the medical community. So no, that study was wrong, that data was wrong. All these alternative communities kind of taking off the context. So there was one doctor who particularly took this to his heart to make a task to modify the numbers, and he spent I don't know how much effort to debunk this data. That it's not $250,000 data, and he said all this alternative media is distorting the facts. People like Mercola and all kinds of stuff, they just not jumping on this 250,000. He said no, the truth is less. But even according to his numbers, average, I believe they reported the range between 5,000 to 80,000, but still average was about 50,000. So let's even forget this John Hopkins University study. That's a big university. Forget about British Medical Journal. Let's take that skeptic analysis. We still have about 50,000 deaths every year from medical errors. That's a lot compared to 275, the whole coronavirus crisis. Cardiac deaths, 650 roughly annually. Car accidents, 1.25 million a year. That's about 3,000 people a day. So 3,000 people a day die for car accidents every single day. That's much, much more than the whole crisis of coronavirus. Remember a few years ago when there was an outbreak, was it measles in California, Disney World?
Yes.
Measles, right? Mm-hmm. And there was incredible uproar we got a forced vaccine. Actually, California lost the religious exemption. And probably most people didn't notice CDC president, the main figure announcement, when they were trying to make this whole panic, he said, nobody died from the measles in the last 30 years, but somebody might. So we have this data that every year people die from the side effects of the vaccines. So he's admitted that nobody died in the last 30 years, but somebody might die. Do we see some discrepancy in this panic and fear versus thousands of documented effects of side effects and deaths and all that stuff? There is some panic here that is way beyond adult reasonable approach. So if you're in the mainstream medical, do not accuse whoever is supposedly alternative. There's nothing alternative. I'm going to show you later on alternative versus mainstream. We are dealing with facts here. Can you calm down and chill out and look at the facts? Nobody died from measles in the last 30 years. 275 people died from coronavirus. Every day, 10, 20 times people more die from car accidents than this from regular flu, from all kinds of stuff. So we got to put this in perspective. Well, the argument will go back to say, but you don't understand, coronavirus is more infectious and there's more hospitalization. The initial number of mortality was 3.5% from Wuhan in China. Numbers got revised to 2%, then 1%. But I'm going to show you some data that really quite possibly is not more than regular flu, about 0.1%. And you tell me if you agree or not after I show the data, but it might be more than flu, maybe about the same. It still doesn't require $14 trillion loss and panic that we have. So mortality rate, well, I'm going to address this issue right now. So this was the biggest reason of all this care. Well, 3.5. Now we know it's not 3.5. Coronavirus. So this was reported. Italy was probably the worst case of all of them, right? And Istituto Superiore di Sanità. This is a main organization in Italy, health institute, right? And this was reported just a week ago in Italy. Coronavirus, ISS, this Istituto Superiore di Sanità. In Italy, there are only 2 deaths. This is not opinion. This is main health organization in Italy reporting. After analyzing all the data, this is not opinion, this is facts. I told you we're going to deal with facts today. In Italy, there are 2 cases of deaths ascertained so far due to COVID-19. And now, yesterday, we said maybe 3. And even those 2, 3 are not sure. Did you hear this, what I said? 2 cases confirmed, according to Italy main health organization to virus. We're talking about thousands of people dying, so where's discrepancy? 2 people, according to them. This is Italian source. Look at the statistics. 48% had 3 or more, we're not talking just illnesses, serious underlying illnesses. In other words, this institute, this National Health Institute said these people probably would have died anyway for these other conditions. This is their opinion, not mine. 48% 3 or more illnesses, 25 2 other illnesses, 25 other illnesses. Only 2 cases so far confirmed that possibly just came from coronavirus alone. That's insane. Something is wrong here. This is Italian source. And this is March 17 sample. Again, Genova. There may be only 2 people who die from coronavirus. This is exact quotation directly from Italian translated. There may be only 2 people who died from coronavirus in Italy who did not present other pathologies. This is what emerges from the medical records examined so far by the Higher Institute of Health. According to what was reported by the president of the institute, which I mentioned, ISS, Italian National Institute of Health, Silvio Brusaferro, during the press conference held today at the Civil Protection in Rome. Positive deceased patients have an average of over 80 years, 80.3 to be exact. The majority of these people are carriers of chronic diseases, and they would have died most likely very soon from something else. They just happen to have coronavirus as well, among other 1, 2, or 3 other diseases. Only 2 people were not presently carriers of non-COVID diseases, but even in these 2 cases, listen to this, even in these 2 cases, the examination of the files is not concluded, and therefore causes of death different from COVID-19 could emerge. Even those 2 cases are questionable. The president of the ISS has specified that little more than 100 medical records have so far come from hospitals throughout Italy. At present, in fact, authorities are unable to distinguish those who died from the virus from those who, on the other hand, are communicated daily to the public, but who are mostly carriers of other serious, I'm going to emphasize the word, serious diseases, and who therefore would not have died from COVID-19. In response to a question from Agenzia Nova, in fact, Brusaferro was unable to indicate the exact number of coronavirus deaths. However, the professor clarified that according to the data analyzed, the vast majority of the victims had serious non-COVID pathologies. And in some cases, the onset of an infection of the respiratory tract can lead more easily to death. So this is really mind-boggling and eye-opening. this is not just Italy. Bloomberg reported the same thing. 99% of those who died from virus had other illnesses. Italian sources. Now, look at this data from the Marty Macari. Okay, this is from somebody who actually is advocating quarantine and a lot of measures, but maybe he doesn't realize himself what he's saying. In the US, there are over 1,600 confirmed cases. Now we have more. This was like I believe about a week ago. If you want to take a guess, without reading further what he's saying, would you say it's logical there are more cases of coronavirus? I'm pretty sure there are, a lot more. We're just not testing. So if the reason why we have this curve going up every day, wow, we have 300 new cases, 400, they existed, we just didn't have a test. And President Trump had a whole announcement of this, we have antiquated system, we're not testing. But it seems that either we should really test everybody, or not. But if we test everybody, and he posed a question, and medical director next to him posed this question, if we can test everybody in the world for influenza, we will overwhelmed. We will have equal scare. I mean, nobody ever in the history of the United States of the world has ever tested everybody for everything. We just can't do that. But if we test it, we will probably discover, according to Martin Macari, he's a medical professor at Johns Hopkins, we might discover 50,000 up to 500,000 cases right now having coronavirus. Okay? So, listen to his statement. Do not believe the numbers when you see. Even numbers on our own Johns Hopkins website. But he doesn't understand himself what he's saying here, it looks like. Do not believe these numbers. They may be up to 500,000 cases right now walking around the United States. Can I ask you a question? Pause for a second. If there are potentially 200,000, 300,000, 500,000 cases right now walking, nobody knows, this is his guess, with coronavirus. And we have 275 people who died. Anybody has calculated to calculate the percentage? I did a little bit. It's extremely low. So suddenly, he's catching himself in a crisis. Suddenly, we do not have even 2%, 1%, not even 0.1% of mortality rate. We're talking mortality rate that is absolutely at least in line with influenza, because if 500,000 people are walking around with coronavirus, and yet 275 people died, something is off with our mortality rate, right? Well, this is not just United States. I'm going to actually build a journalistic case here a little bit later to see that really we have scientific facts that absolutely it's not even 1% that was initially presented, and it's very close to influenza rate. Paul Offit, medical director of the Vaccine Education Center. You cannot get any higher than this, right? Director of the Vaccine Education Center. So he's posing a question. The same question I'm posing. Why are we scared of COVID-19? You agree people are scared, right? We have panic, we have loss, financial loss. Why are we scared? So he's citing three reasons why anybody's scared at all of virus, right? Any virus. Because there is fear. Reason number one, virus may cause permanent disfiguring symptoms. We have many things in the past, like polio and, Ebola. So there were so many serious diseases that would cause permanent damage, permanent disfiguring symptoms that would really last for a lifetime and damage somebody. Nobody wants to really get permanently damaged. So any virus may do that. There's potential, right? Any serious virus, of course. Have predilection for children. There were so many viruses that were wiping the whole population of children. And of course, all of us have extra special soft heart for the children. And three, can lead to severe complications, right? So this is director of the vaccine center. This is why we're afraid of viruses. So I may post later on in some links his whole article, but this is his conclusion. Take precaution, but COVID-19 does not measure up to the viruses in the past. Ebola, swine flu, influenza. So after examining the whole thing of this fear, he is coming to conclusion, this director of the Vaccine Education Center, that coronavirus doesn't measure up. In other words, people do not have permanent disfiguring symptoms. The children are completely spared, or almost completely spared. I'm going to discuss this a little bit later. But really, this was one of the stunning things initially, and we'll discuss why. And it doesn't lead to severe complications. Yes, in some people, in a very small percentage, it does. But the mortality rate was much, much higher for Ebola, swine flu, and many other things. And you will see in some testimonials that many people said, my influenza was last year was much worse than this. Much worse. So this is Paul Offit, his whole article. I will try to put a link there. So this is what he's saying. China, where COVID-19 originated, has reported roughly 3,000 deaths. The population of China is about 1.4 billion. Listen to these statistics carefully. 3,000 deaths, a lot, but population is 1.4 billion. 3 times greater than ours. If we suffer an equivalent proportion of deaths, then 1,000 Americans will die for COVID-19, which is 1/20th to 1/50th of the number who have died from influenza. Wow. Can we stop as a nation, make a pause here, and look at the abyss of a $14 trillion loss worldwide, and look at the director of Vaccine Education Center, who says if we have the same model as China, and we're all saying, well, we have a better model, we have better care, that's what we say, then thousands of Americans will die from COVID. This is his opinion, not mine. I'm presenting authority. And it's just a tiny percentage. Every day, more people will die from influenza than we're going to have in the whole crisis, according to him. We may have more, who knows, but this is his opinion. Because China has 1.4, so all this mortality rate is grossly underrepresented and wrongly presented and misrepresented. So Paul Offit, MD, Director of Vaccine Center, says this, and this is a powerful sentence: which will do more harm? Which will do more harm, the virus or the fear of the virus? And we know the answer. The fear of the virus already has done so much more damage. As at this point, you know, a month from now, President Obama, when he was president, what was the virus at his time, announced a huge emergency, 6 months, and it was like fear, although it was not as much as now. And 6 months later, nobody was talking about this. It was SARS at his time, yeah. So again, my opinion, this is not going to away, even in 18 months. But even 2 months from now, this will be so much non-subject. Yet we have already caused more harm. The fear of the virus has caused more harm than the virus itself. Yes, 275 people dying is regretful. But can we put this in perspective? And most of them, 99%, already had underlying pathological conditions. It doesn't make sense to shut down our entire way of life, which we did, for a virus far less devastating than influenza that we experienced every winter. Director of the Vaccine Education Center, who believes in vaccines, who believes in traditional care. We are doing more harm with all this stuff. Don't cause harm in the name of preventing harm. Don't cause harm in the name of preventing harm. It will take years to recover from the draconian measures we're instituting right now. So this subject might go away, but it may take years for us to economically recover what we're doing right now out of fear for virus. So we are behaving worse than an 8-year-old girl missing her homework. Yeah, this is on a national level. Okay, the curve of mortality. Everybody's talking about curve. We got to flatten the curve. We got to flatten the curve. Okay, can we please discuss how do you flatten the curve when you do not know the curve? How do we even discuss of flattening the curve when we do not know if we have a 500,000 with coronavirus, or 3,000 or 10,000? We're not testing, right? How do we know it's even dangerous if we have 500,000 and only 275 people die, then it's less than influenza mortality, right? So there's a lot of stuff here that we are throwing away these notions without discussing this fully. So, but even discussing that, even China probably had much, much more than reported. If you have a 500,000 here, potentially, according to Johns Hopkins University professor, China also had much more because they didn't test everybody either. So their mortality rate was probably much less than 2-3% as well. And guess what? You heard the news. Most people that died were male who smoke. They had potential for ACE2 receptor, which we'll discuss later. So even according to China, mortality rate was much less, and curve was probably like this and down. And March 18, 3 days ago, China, no new infections. Wow. After 4 or 5 months, new infections? So this is the discrepancy. We can look at any infection, any kind of epidemics from two perspectives, CFR and IFR. CFR is case fatality rate, and IFR is infection fatality rate. This is very important. Again, we are putting science here. This is not alternative medicine. This is science, facts, and let anybody argue with these facts. Case fatality rate is you take known cases, and then look how many die. Then you come with a percentage like 3.5% in China, 2% in Europe, 1%, whatever. We're dealing with those percentages. And it sounds higher than influenza. But more accurate is infection fatality rate, which looks confirmed cases plus undiagnosed. You see the problem here? We do not know who is undiagnosed. But we assume, based on all the studies before, and according to a lot of leading authorities, there's substantially more undiagnosed. So I'll go, here's a professor, Johns Hopkins, I'll go with his estimates of 300 to 500,000 people undiagnosed, and suddenly we come to incredible low mortality rate. And I will admit, we will never know. We will never know. But IFR, infection fatality rate, suddenly puts things in perspective. There's so much less panicky, so much more calm, so much more we go with the lifestyle. Yes, we can still do some controlled quarantine. We can still do some measures. I'm not against that. And I'm going to talk about it as well. But there will be so much less panic, and there will not be $4 trillion lost in the United States. South Korea initially was reported much more, but their aggressive testing, they tested much more. But think about this. South Korea aggressive testing showed 0.6 mortality rate. But did South Korea also test everybody? No. So with the aggressive testing, mortality rate already dropped down from 3.5 to 0.6%. If they tested everybody, it would be well less than 0.1%, right? Do you see the problem here? If you take Johns Hopkins professor number, then we are talking maybe somebody who calculated this number took something like a 0.00054, well below influenza. And I'm not sure that's correct, it's probably not, but we are talking something that is way different picture of mortality rate and the curve that we do not know, actually. But we know, interpolated, that it is quite different and much less panicky than is presented to us. The British approach. They changed the approach a few days ago, but about a week or two ago, they had a totally different approach, and they approached it differently than other nations, and they were talking about this herd immunity. And herd immunity is a phrase that is basically a scenario where so many people become infected and resistant to disease, either through vaccination if it comes on time, according to them, or exposure, that is much harder for virus to spread to the rest of the population. Now, most of the discussion early on was, can we develop immunity? So there were so many conspiracy theories, like this virus is different, it's a biological weapon, and you cannot have immunity. Now we know, yes, you can develop immunity. There's still a lot to be discovered about it, but we have some data that, yes, you develop immunity. We already have cases that survived, and we measured their system, and yes, there's antibodies developed. So, so mass immunity could effectively cause the virus to burn out over the course of 1 or 2 seasons. So this was the initial British approach as of a week or two ago. British approach was 3 core elements. Enact social distancing measures, which I'm okay for that. Enact social distancing measures, much more slowly than other countries though. Shield at-risk groups like elderly and sick from contact with the general population. I'm okay with that. And then let COVID-19 slowly sweep through everybody else. They would say, fine, let's just let's control as much as we can. Johnson's chief scientific advisor says Patrick Vallance, who along with chief medical officer Chris Whitty has been entrusted by the government to manage the spread of virus, says between 60 to 70% of the population would need to be infected to achieve herd immunity. So this was their initial, and I would probably say more calm and rational approach. Yeah, this is what's going on. But last few days, they got afraid with everybody else and started panicking as well. But this was the initial approach, after examining all the data in history, I said this is the proper way to do it. It will be fine. Social distancing, critical people, quarantine, and then let gradually go in and immunity will develop and we'll just forget about it. We think that this virus is likely to be one that comes every year. This is where I completely agree with this, not 18 months. I really would emphasize this. We think this virus is likely to be one that comes every year. We're going to have coronavirus next year. Hopefully, we're not going to be so panicky. Like a seasonal virus, communities will become immune to it, and that's going to be an important part of controlling this longer term. And this is amazing, the curve. Let's talk about the curve. Everybody talks about the curve. Yet we do not know the curve because we do not know if we have 500,000 cases, right? But this in black here is the curve if you do nothing. But I'm going to point to you something shocking because everybody's panicking about what? We cannot handle this. Hospitals will be overwhelmed. Do you see this stuff in red right here, the red line? This is actually the ability of hospitals to handle anything. In other words, under any scenarios, we cannot handle it. So can you please stop being 8-year-old? Can we become adults, scientists, and rational? Under any scenario, but this is the same thing with influenza. This is the same thing with all kinds of stuff. We cannot handle everybody. We cannot. So coronavirus, every single curve and any single scenario is much higher. But this is what happens if you don't do nothing. Curve is extremely high, and then it drops down. But do you notice that it drops down sharper and goes into oblivion sharper, right? And then there's case isolation with household quarantine, closing schools and universities. And closing schools and universities doesn't accomplish much. Yes, it's a little bit flat in the curve, but again, we are still talking about 99% of people not having severe symptoms. So maybe the British model initially was more correct than all this panicky stuff later on. In other words, yes, do social distances, yes, quarantine critical cases, and let gradually people understand it's not such a scary thing. But no matter what, we are way above capacity to hospitalize everybody, you know? And hospitals, can do nothing except just give you oxygen, ventilation, that's it. There's really no current cure for that. So maybe the British model was inspired with this Leicester method, okay? So current governmental model the United States espoused based on assumptions, according to their own admission, is panic, fear. In Texas, I saw even jail time. They were threatening somebody 6 months of jail for getting out of the house, So it's a fear, threat, we're going to punish you. Are you willing to admit you have coronavirus under this condition, right? You're going to probably scare and don't tell anybody, right? There's stigma. So in 1880s, end of 19th century, this Dr. Miller espoused this Leicester method. And he believed in vaccination, but he still wanted Vaccination Acts to be repealed. And I'll explain to you. So he was for vaccination, and he wanted Vaccination Acts to be repealed. And I'll explain why. This is a very important part of the slides. So there was smallpox epidemics at the time, and he was doing emphasis on notification, isolation, quarantine, and vaccination later. Listen to very carefully to the sequence according to this vaccination believer. He believed in vaccination, but wanted Vaccination Acts for infants repealed, for infants specifically. Why? Because the vaccination caused so-called modified smallpox. Listen carefully to this, modified smallpox, which means these children will still have ability to be contagious. They will be asymptomatic, but will spread the true smallpox before diagnosis. So he said, don't vaccinate. Let it emerge. Let quarantine. Let's isolate. But let's be in the open, not hide. Let's not threaten people. Let's not threaten people with 6 months jail. Let's discuss this, right? So Leicester method was so successful quarantine that he believes vaccine was more of a threat than help, especially in infancy. Even today, only live cases of polio known are from vaccines, because there are some more live species that cause a problem. It's a long story about that. But this Leicester method believed in quarantine, but no fear, very controlled, and this was probably inspiration for original British model as a few weeks ago. Now, it would be useful under any medical conditions to look at the case studies. Why are we discussing here theory? Can we look at the people who are sick? And I wish we have ability now to insert a couple of videos, but you can look yourself. Just go anywhere and put real interview or real people who have coronaviruses right now or who had it. And it's stunning that the greatest majority, 99%, have this kind of response. Actual interview. Azrael Cornell, neurosurgeon, 66 years old. Now more than a week into the course of the virus, Cornell said he's starting to feel much better. Sounds like influenza to me. He's got more energy, less soreness, and is able to get out of bed more than just once or twice a day. He is hoping to be asymptomatic by the end of the week, and after an additional 7 days without symptoms, he said he'll be going back to work. Sounds pretty normal to me. I mean, not good. Nobody wants to be sick, but not scary. I just took excerpts. You know, this is all real life studies. I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling quite healthy. I'm feeling fine. Yeah, I had some mild symptoms, much less than a flu last year. I don't feel restrictions in my breathing whatsoever. I am fine, smiling as a healthy person. You see visibly on a picture and looking healthy. Greatest majority will recover without any problems. And I mentioned this TV anchor coming with such, and several of these come with a panic. What's going on? He said, I'm fine. Like, what are you panicking about? And, you know, I hope some of you are here, parents. You know, as a parent, if a child injures themselves, like maybe scratches the knee or something, would it help to a child if you came and said, what did you do? What did you do? You know, don't you feel intuitively as a parent you need to calm down and say, no, it's okay, it's not a big deal. So we are making a big deal. But when people who are sick are not making a big deal out of that, and we are making a big deal, we should question that. That would be like a child comforting the parent. You know? Like my daughter coming to me and says, Dad, it's okay, don't panic. Right? Something is off here. That the patients who have coronavirus have to comfort us to say, no, I'm okay. Can you stop panicking? You know? So there's so many things off here that I don't know where to even begin how to come to the point of maybe changing our minds and changing our mental stance of all this panic. So what do we have a solution? Mainstream medical approach. So there are only 3 things proposed now in the mainstream medicine as a solution. Convalescent plasma. Do you know what is convalescent plasma? You take the blood from survivors of viral diseases, you process it for plasma, they have developed antibodies, right? And you just give it to a person who is sick. Because there will be antibodies, it kind of jumpstart the immune system. Do you see the problem here in terms of the cost? You have to find extremely limited cases who, you know, survived. There are many who survived, most of them survived, but it's such a new thing. You have to find them, see that they're okay, collect their blood. It's very expensive. So it takes time to engineer and purify these antibodies, and past epidemics have often waned before the drugs were ready, and many holistic logistical hurdles, they have to be kept cold, must be infused, and it's very expensive. So it's extremely complicated process. But think about this, if 99% of people will recover fairly easily and develop their own antibodies, why would you go into extremely expensive therapy to do it for somebody who already recovered? Yes, I understand, for less than 1% of people that will be useful. So let's say this probably is okay for that 1%. To maybe take from younger people this blood who recovered, take antibodies and give it to them. But on the wide scale, it's not necessary. For 90+% of people, it's not necessary. But we can consider this, and I would say a nod, okay, we can consider this mainstream approach, convalescent plasma. Actually, in California, they have one of these rejuvenative anti-aging treatments where you pay $10,000. They take blood from teenagers, you know, purify it, of course, and give it to elderly people who are 70, 80 years old, who are rich enough to pay $10,000, and at least subjectively, they report they feel better. It's kind of a little bit out there, but I would say fine. Let's consider this. I would give it a nod. Hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. There are 2 substances, and everybody says hydroxychloroquine is probably a little bit safer. And I wish I have more presentation on this. Maybe next time we have a lecture. This really comes from herbal therapy from 16th century and so on. And herbal therapy had actually less side effects, although this might be a little bit stronger and more concentrated. But chloroquine interferes with the virus' ability to replicate in two ways. First, the drug enters compartments called endosomes within the cell membrane. Endosomes tend to be slightly acidic, but the chemical structure of the drug boosts their pH, making the compartment more basic. And many viruses, including COVID, acidify endosomes in order to breach the cell membrane, release their genetic material. So chloroquine will block this step. In other words, it's going to make it a little bit more pH basic and will stop this acidifying effect. Make sense? Yeah, I would say yes. It's fine. Makes sense. But this drug has immune suppressing effect. Would you want that? It has a lot of side effects. But it's not terrible. I would even give you the nod to this as well. It's anti-malaria drug originally. I would say fine. I could possibly accept that as an option if nothing else exists. But this is the mechanism. You know, we need a acidifying effect for the virus to enter the cell. They're coming to the receptor site. We're making a little bit more alkaline, stops the virus to enter in. Good. I'm okay with that. The drug also prevents SARS-CoV from plugging into a receptor called angiotensin-converting enzyme 2 on primate cells, according to the 2005 report. When the virus inserts its spike protein into ACE2 receptor, it sets off a chemical process that alters the structure of the receptor. Chloroquine appears to undermine this process, and in turn, viral replication in general. The authors noted that there is a link to this article. I would give this a nod as well. Carefully, not too much. It can be addictive on large amounts in a long time. I don't think it's ideal, but I would say fine. I can potentially accept that as an option. Vaccines. I do not want to even spend time discussing this. You know, adjuvant agents can be an issue. Safety data is often missing, but I would say theoretically, maybe they're going to discover some magic vaccines for this, but it's way ahead of time, so I'm not going to discuss this much. It's a whole new subject on that. Okay, so this is panic, which we see based on the data is quite needless, totally needless to look at the facts of actual mortality rate is probably less than 0.1%. Totally needless in the fact that 270 people died, less than in any single day died from all kinds of other causes. So we are finding ourselves caught up in incredible quagmire that is so unnecessary that we should all scratch our hand. What are we doing to ourselves? Traditional medical approach has some answers that some of them may be useful, and I would potentially accept them myself if I were in a situation not to have anything else. But do we have something better? Do we have something better? And now I'm going to have the whole list of supplements that you may take, but I'm going to just say, which I really should have done in the beginning as a disclaimer, I'm not claiming there is a cure for virus. There really is not, honestly. There is no cure for virus or will ever be developed. There is no such thing as something can kill the virus and stop it to exist because they go into latent stage and can be there forever. And really the only answer is to develop immunity. So there is no cure for virus. We don't have medicine that's going to kill the virus, but we can support the immune system. And we can do something to assist the body. So we're not making any medical claim here of that we're developing drug here or have a drug-like approach, nor we are trying to do that. But the question here that I want to pose in my proposal, in functional medicine approach, first question is, are we alternative medicine? And this Paul Offit, this director of vaccine education, I really, this is in another article of his, and again, he's not really alternative medicine or functional medicine, he's just pretty much mainstream. But he's open-minded, and he does look at the data, and he does accept when the data is there. And I wish the whole United States of America was like that. We have such a war between so-called traditional medicine, alternative medicine, absolutely unnecessary. Let's look at the data. Let's be honest and stop being governed by profits. Can we really become ethical doctors? Can we ethically look at these things and really come to a conclusion? There should be some change of heart at some point if you're a doctor and look at your heart and says, am I honest with myself? Am I looking at the data? And at least I feel this Paul Offit is honest here. And he does look at the data, and he's listing his article, a bunch of verbs that do not measure up in the data. I said, fine, you have a point, right? but he also is honest enough to look at a bunch of data and says, yeah, this makes sense. So if United States of America had more doctors like that who are more honest and said, let's look at the data. A lot of these studies were a little bit convoluted, but still, this guy is doing honest approach to this. So I love this. I hope you're going to write this down and remember this. There is no such a thing as alternative medicine. I would say amen. I love this. If clinical trials show that a therapy works, it's a good medicine, right? There is no alternative medicine. There is just a medicine. If we have a data, if we have a logic, and if we show it works, then why call it alternative medicine? Just let's call it medicine, right? And if a therapy doesn't work, then it's an alternative. I don't want any alternative, right? I would like to have one mainstream medicine and all of us be logical and honest and accept stuff that works. And I believe we're looking at facts here thoroughly and stuff that works. So there is no such a thing as alternative medicine. I like to call it functional medicine because we're looking, as I said, at facts and interdisciplinary and solution, and we're looking how the body functions. So yes, there is no such a thing as alternative medicine. So this is so we're going to look at some data, what we can do. This is a 1918 Spanish flu. There were two major flus in the past, and both of them happened, and I made this presentation a little bit shorter, all this stuff can be expanded much more, but both of these epidemics were in a major political turmoil or wars. This was at the end of World War I, when there was a huge shortage of nutrition, huge shortage of vitamin D. There was even some volcano that blocked the sun, so there was not even enough sun shining. And the influenza and Spanish flu was not stopped by quarantine, by putting people in the sun. This was stopped it in the spring of 1918. They put people in the sun the whole day. They had these modified tents. And this is the greatest catastrophe ever. The 50 million people died. And during Spanish flu epidemics of 1918, medics found that severely ill flu patients nursed outdoors recovered better than those treated indoors. Now with this government-imposed restrictions in Illinois, somebody posed, can I go and play golf? No, golf courses are closed. I want to play tennis. It looks like some of the tennis courts are closed. Hold on. This whole influenza that was much worse than this got resolved with sun and fresh air, and you're telling me that all public, do you know all public parks are closed? I would say no, open all the public parks. Let's take this crisis of being isolated and get everybody outside. Beaches in Florida closed. Are we losing our mind? Beaches in Florida closed. Go on a beach, suntan, sit down, you know. So research shows that outdoor air is a natural disinfectant. Fresh air can kill the flu virus and other harmful germs. Equally silent is germicidal, and there's now evidence it can kill the flu virus. Most of the victims of the so-called Spanish flu did not die from influenza. This is very important. They died from pneumonia and other complications. And I feel the same thing is going on now. Taking patients outside and keeping hospitals' windows open all day and night reduced deaths among hospital patients from 40% to about 13%. That's stunning. In 1960s, Ministry of Defense scientists proved that fresh air is natural disinfectant. So military surgeons during World War II used routinely saline to heal infected wounds. Low vitamin D levels are now linked to respiratory infections and may increase susceptibility to influenza. So why not do this? Now, let's get everybody out. Now everybody's locked inside. Yeah, that's going to help a little bit for not spreading, but this is really the solution. So we have to see that this is really 19th century all over again. We have not stopped this battle, and you who are in this functional medicine already know about this. I'm going to just mention for those who did not see this before, Louis Pasteur versus Béchamp. This is 19th century battle. So in 19th century France, Pasteur was advocating the notion that germs is the cause of a disease. Everything is a germ. But scientist named Antoine Béchamp advocated a conflicting theory known as a cellular theory. Cellular theory. And I really like that title, cellular theory. And I will explain to you, based on my solution, why I like that. So Béchamp's cellular theory is almost completely opposite. He noted that these germs that Pasteur was so terrified of were opportunistic in nature. Do you know that 70% of people have latent Epstein-Barr virus? Yet not 70% of people are sick. So viruses are opportunistic. A lot of pathogenic organisms are opportunistic. They're looking for opportunity to attack. So I'm going to tell you a personal story. When I bought my house 12 years ago, I planted a cherry tree. Because I grew up in Yugoslavia, we had fruit trees all over the place. I was a little bit nostalgic. I'm going to plant a cherry tree. As soon as it started growing and developing leaves first year, Japanese beetle came, ate it up all. I said, wow, it's my tree. Hey, and it's my tree. Stop. And I went to Home Depot, and I'm against anything unnatural. Really, I'm kind of natural guy as much as you get it, but I still thought maybe I need to buy something to kill it, you know. And I went to Home Depot and found some old guy. Can you believe to find somebody really wise in Home Depot? There was I met a really wise guy. It was kind of serendipity, divine serendipity. And I said, do you have something to kill this Japanese beetle to protect the tree? He said, why do you want that? I said, they eat my leaves. No. And he pointed out to me a mineral solution, some fertilizers. He pointed to me 2 things. I felt this is God sent man in Home Depot, you know. Not Home Depot, what I'm talking, the construction store. That's Home Depot, yes. So he pointed out to me this fertilizer and mineral solution. He said, put this in a soil, be patient, wait until next season. And as the tree absorbs these minerals, the tree is just impoverished. It's going to grow, and Japanese beetle won't attack it. And I was like, wow, I have to be lectured on that, right? And I felt so kind of humbled. I said, I should know that, right? But it never crossed my mind to apply what I'm applying to human beings, what I'm applying to myself, to my cherry tree. He told me just put some minerals in. I did it even kind of puzzled, and last year there was 90% less attack, and the following year nothing. I said, wow. And I wish I took the phone number of this guy. I wish we became friends. I said, you're my buddy. Home Depot guy taught me that my cherry tree needed minerals and the soil. So in other words, even the cherry tree is attacked by opportunistic organisms. If the cherry tree is strong, it's not going to be attacked. And do you know why we have a problem today in the modern farming? Why it's hard to have organic crop? Because we have weakened the soil so much with pesticides, with glyphosate, and all those things, that now it's hard to grow organic stuff because it's all weak. So we would now need to suffer who knows how many years of going back to natural fertilizers to strengthen the soil. So and I hear this all the time. People trying to attempt to grow organically, says it doesn't grow, it's so weak, you know? So if my cherry tree will respond to minerals, why would not your body? Why would you not be stronger so coronavirus will not attack you? And we know that. This is reported in every media ever in the world. Strong people do not get coronavirus or get extremely mild case. $12 trillion saved worldwide. $4 trillion saved in the United States, just understanding this Home Depot guy advice, right? I actually wanted to run for United States president when I realized that. I can save $4 trillion to the United States budget. And then I realized I was not born in this country, so I can't. What a bummer. But imagine if you had a smart president who would understand this, smart country who would understand this, and say, we can apply cherry tree lesson and just put some soil, strength to destroy. So this is Bisevac, cellular theory. Strengthen the tree, strengthen the body, and this opportunistic organism will not attack it. So opportunistic organisms are everywhere, all the time, all the time. We are surrounded with viruses all the time. And even existed inside of us in symbiotic relationship. So the only problem is when the host became damaged. Note this, host became damaged or compromised, that these germs began to manifest symptoms of a disease. Now, what I'm going to show you to the next slide, you may not have heard of this, and you may find it stunning. So watch this. So Bisevac advocated not killing the germs, but cultivation of healthy diet, hygiene, healthy lifestyle. Our idea is to strengthen the immune system, so-called terrain, and so on. But look, the last statement of Pasteur before he died. This is to be stunning. I don't know if you've ever seen it before. Last words of Louis Pasteur on his deathbed. The microbe is nothing. The terrain is everything. He had a change of heart. My friends, doctors and colleagues and listeners, if Louis Pasteur, I asked you at the beginning of my session, are you willing to change your mind? Do you have honest enough heart with presented the facts that you would change your mind about the panic, about the facts, about a scientific view? I'm not saying this virus is to be neglected. I'm for limited quarantine as well. I'm all for British model. I'm all for Basham model. But even Pasteur, there was a fierce opponent of Basham. He had a change of heart and said terrain is everything. La terrain is tout. So his last words literally translated is terrain is everything. You know? It's everything. Environment is everything. So he had a change of heart and says everything I said was wrong. Terrain is everything. Now, I'm not against killing the microbes. Occasionally we do that as well. But we need to, so it's not like a black and white situation, but we need to emphasize so much more this terrain, strong immune system, cherry tree, than anything else to be successful. All right. I'm going to just quick look at the time. Are we okay with time? So, why children escape CV? Remember that professor of vaccine education when he said we're scared of viruses because children die? That was one of the 3 reasons. Well, children rarely die and rarely get seriously infected. Do we believe in the immune system? Do we have to spend $35,000? Can we resolve this faster? Can we look at the children response? Could we resolve all this stuff with a healthy dietary lifestyle habits, maybe $100 a month on some supplements? I'm not saying supplements are a cure, so I'll explain this a little bit more. Fresh air and sun. And instead of $12 trillion, we could have maybe done all this with $100 million worldwide. So the greatest question, and I'm going to come back to this subject of children, for months right now, and there was all this theory that we do not develop immunity. We do. So this is Chinese scientist Li Kim-guan, director of pneumonia prevention in China, and he says those who have been infected with COVID-19 develop a protective antibodies. So this is a big relief. Wow, this virus is not different. You know, it is different, of course. Every virus is different in some ways, but we develop antibodies. Stephen Glockman, infectious disease physician at Penn Medicine, the medical director of Penn Global Medicine, having the disease once results in immunity in most individuals, as is seen with other coronaviruses. All these things were so scary. We developed immunity. Benjamin Davido is an infectious disease specialist at Raymond Poincaré Hospital in Gaucher, Paris. Children are exposed to a number of different coronaviruses. So this is his explanation why children escape. They have developed an immunity against this virus and don't develop the severe clinical form. So the children do not have severe form because their immune system is stronger, but there is something else. COVID-19 cannot attach itself to the respiratory epithelium in children. The immature epithelium has few, if any, receptors. We're talking about those receptors, ACE2 receptors, so they have less of that. So you cannot attach there. So those are the 2 reasons, according to Dr. Benjamin Davido, why children are not getting sick. But the $1 million question, again, $12 trillion question, can we do something to have something that children have? We cannot do everything that children have, but we can. So we're going to look again at facts and science and data. So this is the mystery agent. It's like a big detective novel, you know, big scary movie, horror movie, and it should not have been for a horror movie. And in this horror movie, we have mystery agent, and mystery agent is ACE2, which is human angiotensin converting enzyme 2. So SARS-CoV-2 and the other SARS viruses share 80% of homology and use the same cell receptor ACE2, human angiotensin converting enzyme 2. So this receptor has a high affinity binding to the current coronavirus, more so than in the past epidemics. So if this is a cell, every cell has kind of just tiny bit different spike, how they call it, you know, in the furin protein, a little bit different spike how the virus attaches. So this one kind of chooses ACE2. And this is luckily not present much in children. but it's extremely highly present in smokers. Somebody actually posted on Facebook, Facebook is full of this coronavirus discussion every day, and one of my friends posted, oh, how come Singapore had so many more cases, and look at Italy, and she was making some comparison, or Spain, but Singapore was full of smog. And every time you have a lot of smog or smoking or any kind of environmental factors, the coronavirus is become more opportunistic. So ACE2 is found to be significantly more actively expressed in goblet cells of smokers and alveolar type 2 cells of former smokers. So you could have started smoking 40 years ago. And by the way, have you been in Europe lately? You know how they smoke? The whole Europe, official rates are maybe 40, 50%, but it looks like 70%. I went with my daughter there first time, my oldest daughter, when she was 3, and she has never seen a smoker. And when she went the first time there, Daddy, what are they doing? What is that in their mouth? What are they holding? And she was mesmerized. Like, what are they doing? They're just putting something in their mouth. Europe smokes, got chimney. In China, we have twice as many men, and men smoke significantly more than women. So all this Italian crisis, huge percentages because they smoke. They don't tell you that, but it's hard to find a person in Europe who doesn't smoke, young and old. So and former smokers too, and pollution in Europe is tremendous. So in former smokers as well, the other two receptors involved in coronavirus, DCCSIGN and LSIGN, present similar story. They also prefer smokers, so to speak. The fact that children don't smoke and have more robust immune system seems to have spared them from the attacks, plus this endothelial tissue that is less developed. So now we're coming to the end almost of this detective story. It's overblown, mortality rate is overblown, curve is misunderstood, severe conditions are misunderstood. Italian study shows only 2 people really died from coronavirus. Everybody else would have died probably soon anyway. So we're almost at the end here. We're going to talk about soap. Everybody talks about soap. Virus has 3 components, especially let's talk about this virus's specificity: RNA, protein, fat. Okay? When you take soap, you take the fat component away. Virus is dead anyway, but it cannot even be reassembled once you take the fatty component away. So this is kind of a chart explaining how soap works. So yes, wash your hands. I'm absolutely for that. Coronavirus is a self-assembled nanoparticle in which the weakest link is the lipid, fatty bilayer. The soap molecule acts as a molecular crowbars, wedging themselves into microlipid membrane and prying it apart. So this is from Paul Thordarson, supramolecular biochemist. And he's explaining this in detail, so he cites how soap works. It's kind of fun. I really enjoyed watching his explanation of something as simple as soap, how it takes away this fatty layer and kills it. Everybody talks about vitamin D. All coronavirus attached to ACE2 enzyme. Let me just show you the slide here. I think I have it somewhere further. I'm going to come back to the slides. Excuse me for jumping a few slides over. Oh, maybe I don't have it, so I apologize. So I have a slide of this vitamin D competing with the ACE2 enzymes. So in other words, ACE2 receptor sites and vitamin D are kind of competitive. So if you don't have enough vitamin D, ACE2 are increased, their receptor activity is increased, and coronavirus can attach more easily. So if you have a healthy level of vitamin D, you will be much more protective than somebody who doesn't have healthy level of vitamin D. So all coronaviruses attached to ACE2 enzyme in human cells. Vitamin D reduces ACE2 enzyme activity with competitive binding. All previous human coronaviruses are fought by vitamin D. Hypothesis, which seems to be completely validated, vitamin D will also fight the new form of COVID-19. When cells had the ACE2 protein on their surfaces, the virus was able to break into them. Previous reports that the new virus relies on that lock is now proven. New findings, however, provide direct evidence from living cells that this 2019 CoV virus attaches to ACE2 to gain access, essentially picking the cellular lock with a spiky protein on the virus surface. And there's much more explanation, maybe in the next lecture, about the furin protein, about this particular spike. Every virus has this particular spike, and this one has one particular spike where the virus enters the cell. And this is an example of one virus. And if you look here, there's a spike on glycoprotein trimmer, and there is vitamin D that fights enveloped virus. So I promised at the beginning to be practical. I don't know if I succeeded. To be clear, I don't know if I succeeded with that. You'll be the judge. To present the data that hopefully you have not seen somewhere else. Maybe you did. But there is a bunch of supplements I'm going to mention at the end, but I'm not going to spend much time talking. Hope you're not going to be disappointed, because next lecture in April I'm going to talk about it more. But we have a kind of a incredible informed and genius doctor in our staff, bariatric research, Dr. Alex Vasquez. I'm going to show the link at the end to his almost free, like a $3 digital book that has tons of explanation. If you want to go into science of vitamin D, vitamin A, that was not my goal today. I'm going to give you the list. I'm going to give you the list of my proposal of prevention. But we're going to go much more into science of some of the stuff in the future lectures. But I want to present something that most likely you're not going to hear from other doctors. And that is this stuff on glycoproteins. And I'm really shocked how few people talk about this. So of all the lists I'm going to present to you at the end, two, to me, are in the forefront. Vitamin D and this stuff here, IAG. How many of you have used this before? Arabinogalactans. Basically, this is a sugar. But let me try again to be clear. There are roughly 3 types of sugar that we can consume. Simple sugars that we're trying to avoid, not to get diabetes and overweight. Medium complexity sugars, like stuff in grain and beans and stuff like that. And there are very complex sugars, polysaccharides, that are found in nature in certain areas. Medicinal mushrooms have usefulness because of that, of these very complex polysaccharides. Reishi, chaga, cordyceps, turkey tail. Actually, there was incredible, successful nationwide study funded by National Health Institute. They had extremely positive outcome on turkey tail and breast cancer. Read about it. It was one of the best studies ever done in functional medicine on usefulness of turkey tail, and they have these glycoproteins. So I'm talking about this more because you will probably not hear much about this anywhere else. So read this here. For the coronavirus to be effective, this is very important. Cleavage of the glycoprotein is needed for entry into the cell. Remember we talked about cell, vitamin D, ACE2 receptor site, they spike in the protein, in the furin protein. So every virus has different spike. But we are talking here about a detailed science that can be extremely complex. Yet, any virus, including COVID-19, needs to do this cleavage of glycoprotein to enter into the cell. So it doesn't matter now if it enters here or there or here, it's going to enter the cell. So I wish I put a picture here. I kind of forgot to add it to my slides. I grew up in Yugoslavia. In my hometown, there's a fortress of over 500 years old. At that time, they did not have modern weapons. They didn't have modern cannons, and the only their protection is big walls. So walls at some places are like a 10, 12 feet thick. The narrowest is probably 7, 8 feet thick. These are like, from here to here, all stones and high, right? Really, really high. I would say probably over 100 feet tall in some places, maybe even 200 feet tall in some places. So it's one of the most preserved medieval fortresses in the world in my hometown where I live. And I grew up there. And I always like to use analogies. As I said, light clarity. So imagine the cell is like a fortress. So go back to this story, Pasteur versus Beauchamp. That even Pasteur at the end of his life, yes, terrain is everything. Yes, terrain is everything, right? So imagine the cell is a fortress. So if the enemy enters, doesn't matter if it enters on this wall or that variation of the wall. If you have a thick wall, it's not going to enter, right? If you have a thin wall, it's going to enter anywhere. Now we can have the whole lifespan in science and get 5 PhDs to explain the detail about spike on furin protein here or there and differences, and get a lot of published media and become famous doctor emeritus of universities. But what if you have a strong cell? And I'm for all the studies. I'm for that. But if you have a strong membrane of the cell, if you have a strong fortress, then all the discussion becomes less important, right? So we know about bilipid layer. We know about the cells have a fat. We know about omega-3 fatty acids, how important it is to build the membranes of the cell. But nobody talks about glyconutrients, about glycoproteins. There was only one other company that is multi-level that talks about this, but they use a lot of misinformation and misquoting research. But there is some real research behind it. And I want to point this out that 4 of the last, I'm in the wrong slide here. 4 of the last 8 Nobel Prizes for medicine have dealt with the cellular communication process. And in 1999, Nobel Prize for Medicine was awarded to Dr. Gunther Blobel for his work in this new field of science, medicine called glycobiology. Nobel Prize. You know, it's not awarded easily. Because he presented the importance of this glycobiology for a cellular level. So in the body, I'm going to, again, be very simple over here. We have humoral immunity, and we have something called cell-to-cell immunity. Which one do you think is more important for viral protection, for cancer protection? Cellular immunity, cell-to-cell communication, cell-to-cell immunity, right? And there is so much discussion on cancer theory. What causes cancer? Is it the virus? Is it a fungi? Is it, all kinds of stuff? Is it the toxins? And I would say you're all correct. But what if the fortress of the cell is strong? Then even that is a moot point as well, right? And I'm not against this research as well. Let's research. Let's do the kind of stuff. But if the fortress is strong, so he got a Nobel Prize for showing how important the cell-to-cell immunity is, the cell-to-cell communication. And if you make a fortress strong, then you're in good shape, right? So years ago, when I got my finished my board certification in functional medicine, and it was a lot of what I said over the head stuff, for 2 years that I enjoyed thoroughly. I really did enjoy it. But after several years of studying and passing the examination and getting my board certification, being a practical guy and loving science, I came to my own world and thinking, okay, how can I summarize this? How can I summarize all this incredible science in a practical language that somebody can use? And I actually wrote down the article that some of you have seen. I put it jokingly, Ray's anti-aging magic concoction, where we have 5 powders inside. And all of them have to do with cellular immunity. All of them have to do with cellular function and metabolism. And I will share that with you later. Just leave your email information. I will share with you that in further lectures in April, anti-aging magic concoction. And this was part of that anti-aging magic concoction. So this is what I was thinking. If Gunther Blobel, scientist, got a Nobel Prize in cell-to-cell immunity and showed how important that is. Go back to Béchamp versus Pasteur. We want to have terrain. We want to have a cherry tree strong, right? So if this is important, and every single cell needs this, can I ask you a scientific question? How much do you need to cover every single cell? How many cells do we have in the body? Scientists are fighting about everything, right? There's an estimate between 50 trillion cells to 200 trillion cells. You know why we do not know? Because nobody can count. We cannot go into about it. But we are coming to a scientific consensus of 100 trillion cells in the body. If you have 100 trillion cells in the body, and every single cell needs glycobiology, glyconutrients, how many of polysaccharides do you need for how long to reach a significant amount of them? And after scratching my head for a few months, I came to a highly scientific conclusion, a lot for a long time. In other words, nobody really would know. So I said, I'm going to be guinea pig. So I'm going to use this every day. We have this product, 20 years maybe? But I use it occasionally. And I had occasional tremendous story, like my mom was sick for 2 weeks, and I told her to use this. After 2 teaspoons, she woke up next morning completely healthy. Then a lady from church had the same experience. So we had occasional these stunning stories, wow, and then we questioned, wow, maybe it's not there, maybe it's coincidental, but it happened too often to be coincidental. So I said, fine, let's try this. I'll be guinea pig. I'll do it every single day. And I find myself busy as everybody else, and I decided to do this first thing in the morning as soon as I wake up, literally. I go to the bathroom, go and take my powders, including IG. Within about 3 months, I noticed a difference that I could feel. This is doing something. But it was not enough that I can 100% be sure, I think I feel better. About 9 months later, it was so certain, without any shadow of a doubt, that this stuff is doing something magic in my body, that I'm achieving certain ultra immunity that was unknown to me before. I grew up as a child with a broken nose. I had sinus infection my whole life, and I was in hospitals all the time. I was on antibiotics all the time, and my change in diet and all the stuff I'm doing now in late 20s have drastically changed my lifestyle in every way. But the greatest change ever in my immune system came after this. So this has been now roughly 5 years that I have not missed a day. Maybe in 5 years I missed 2 days total. They have hardly missed a day in 5 years using this every day. A huge heaping teaspoon, pretty much closer to a tablespoon, sometimes even more than that, every single morning. And I challenged so far probably 40, 50 people, among them at least 20, 30 doctors, to try to use this for 9 months. Every single one of them that was able to talk later said the same thing. You're right, 100% right. This does give you certain ultra immunity that you have never experienced before. It's amazing. I give this to my kids. This is safe to give it to kids. It's a very safe product. I cannot convince my kids to take over, since everybody, there's a struggle in the family. You know how kids are, so they don't take this daily, but I'm trying. But a month ago, everybody in school got sick, and my kids got a little bit sick too, but they resolved their flu much faster in 2 or 3 days versus other kids going on antibiotics and all that stuff. And I didn't get even a single sign. Everyone was sick around me, nothing happened to me. So even my kids now start joking that I'm an alien. And I said, no, I just have IgG. And what this is, it's a white larch tree bark extract. This is the only one, at least to my knowledge, processed to 99% purity. There is another competing product that has 46% purity. And by the way, the product costs $150. This is like a 10 times less expensive. And it has much more concentration. So this is the only product, to my knowledge, to have 99% concentration and 10-step purification process. And a doctor came this morning before we started a lecture and says, how much does it cost? And I started joking with her, $1,500. $1,500. I said, wow. And I said, no, this is what I feel it should cost. And it doesn't. It costs much, much less than that. But this is worth in gold. And out of everything I can ever mention on any virus, including coronavirus, I would say if we can have healthy levels of vitamin D, and again, this is not cure for coronavirus. Let me clarify this again. This is based on Nobel Prize research to strengthen your polysaccharide levels in the body. I would say this is the strongest thing I know personally, to use this daily. And don't give me theoretical opinion. Just use this for 9 months and then tell me what you think. And I personally have at home at any point at least 5 to 10 bottles of this stuff as a reserve. And expiration date is officially 3 years, but it can pretty much last forever. And by the way, we're in a big shortage. I have to warn you, so don't order tomorrow 100 bottles because they are not available. Don't hoard this like a toilet paper. I know you'll be tempted, but you should once the shortage gets filled in. We are better than most other companies, but we are in shortage of certain things like vitamin D and IgG. But order at least a few. But I'm trying to tell you that this should be a regular part of your diet and all your patients for the rest of your life. And this is one thing I try never to run out of. So these complex sugars help cell-to-cell immunity. And this arabinogalactans to me are a shining star. And I'm going to explain just one more thing. All these polysaccharides are measured. There's a chain, there's a molecule, right? And they measure how long the chain is and how dense the branching is. So imagine an analogy of a tree. So imagine the tree, you have some trees that are very tall but don't have much branching. So imagine a tree that is extremely tall and has extremely dense branches, right? So this is arabinogalactans, especially in this purity, is one of the longest chain and most dense chain ever developed and ever discovered, how potent it is. And it's actually much more potent than echinacea. Echinacea, the most best-selling herb in the world, works with echinococcides, which is also a sort of polysaccharide, but it has much less than this, about 4%. This is 99% purity and concentration. So this is to me a shining star. And if you want to have something practical, not just this whole explanation about the scare and to calm your fear, and to have a practical response, I would say have healthy level of vitamin D, emulsified, of course. Vitamin D should never be taken in any other form but emulsified. It's much safer and bypasses the liver. The other substances that are useful are choline. It's essential nutrient for all cells because it plays a role in the synthesis of the membrane phospholipid components of the cell membranes, and is a methyl group donor in methionine metabolism, as well as in the synthesis of neurotransmitter acetylcholine. This is the link to Dr. Alex Vasquez's digital book. You will have a link on YouTube. I believe it's $3, right?
I think so.
Yeah, $3. It's amazing. This guy, I get a headache just looking at his books, you know, how complex they are and involved. So you're going to have a lot more information that I'm not covering today. You can continue there. I was just trying to be very practical. And these are the essential nutrients that I take. Now, it doesn't mean you have to take all of this. It doesn't mean that you have to give suggestion to a patient to take all of this. But I'm putting this in order of importance to me. So polysaccharides, IgG, I was a shining star. If you can get one practical takeaway from this lecture, this will be it. And you know, you should never run out of this. But again, try this for 9 months, and you may have my link through YouTube. And honestly, I would like you to give me feedback 9 months later. Shoot me an email and tell me I heard your lecture and I tried this for 9 months. Tell me, do you agree with this or not? Do you really feel you got certain autoimmunity after 9 months of taking IgG every day? Vitamin D, most laboratories run between 30 to 100 in the laboratory range. I would say you should have at least 50. I like to have it 80, 90 level. When I tested myself, I was 96 last time. So have healthy level of vitamin D. And there's tons of lectures and Vasquez links about that. My goal is not to go technical about every single supplement. Vitamin A, zinc. This is funny. I get this regular medical updates as well from Medscape and so on. So there was this article I got last week from a traditional doctor who said, oh, let me explain 10 myths about what doesn't work for coronavirus. And so he listed supplements and vitamins. And he said, and by the way, homeopathic nutrients dash vitamin C, silver, selenite dash don't work. And I was scratching my head. This is a leading doctor who doesn't even know that vitamin C is not homeopathic nutrient, you know, who is listing all the supplements as homeopathic. Are we that far in ignorance in this country that we don't even understand the difference between homeopathic and essential micronutrients in the body, you know? And I don't think there's a country in the world that has that much ignorance from the mainstream medical community. You know, that's why I like this Dr. Paul open-mindedness, that let's be honest and let's just, I'm not against traditional medicine. You know, if you have an accident, go to hospital. There's a lot of drugs and modern treatments that are useful, but can we stop the war and can we not call vitamin C homeopathic nutrient? You know, so many articles, vitamin C doesn't work. Of course, vitamin C is not going to kill coronavirus, nothing will. But we have tons of science on all these nutrients, on micronutrient level, what do you do in the body. And most, again, crises and pandemics in the world happen in the wars, in the lack of nutrients. So this is a basic science. This is not alternative medicine versus traditional medicine. Vitamin D, vitamin A, zinc, selenamethionine, N-acetylcysteine, and Dr. Vasquez is big on this one. You're going to find tons of data on N-acetylcysteine. I'm not going to even begin to explain that, maybe in the following lectures. Vitamin C, BioC Plus, oral probiotics. I like adult or children ENT. There's tremendous science on that as well. And by the way, there are over 40 clinical studies in the world and patents, including United States patent on this product, on oral probiotic children ENT. It's stunning stuff, developed by world-leading microbiologists. Propolis, we have it in Caprest and Ultravirex, and bioflavonoids. Vitamin C needs bioflavonoids to be activated, otherwise it's not much useful in the body. And I'm going to just spend a few more minutes, I'm done here, on propolis. Again, I promise to you to try to give you stuff that you will not hear elsewhere. That's why I'm not spending stuff you can hear from Vasquez in other places. So that's why I spend so much time on IgG and deciphering these scare tactics and real facts from the just the myths. But you will not probably hear much else about IgG and neurogalactans, at least not emphasized, and propolis. There is no pharmacy in Europe that doesn't have propolis. Propolis is one of the strongest natural antiviral substances known in the world. Propolis, even in the highest dilution, had antiviral properties. Do you know what propolis is? It's a byproduct of bees. Bees gather the different resins from the tree. They add their own secretion and create something very unique that is very tacky, brown color, dark brown color, and very stainy. This stuff, if you put anywhere in the shirt, you can never wash it off. It's kind of, you're done forever. Beehives are coated inside with propolis. And beehives are considered the most sterile environment in the world. More sterile than any hospital. If any insect wanders into the beehive, they sting it and embalm it in propolis, and it can stay preserved for eternity. I went to Egyptian museum many years ago and saw some of these mummies and some of these organs from mummies preserved, and they were preserved in propolis. So one of the secrets of Egyptian mummies was propolis. Propolis is incredible preservative, incredible antiviral substance, anti-inflammatory. We have it in Caparest and Ultravirex, and it's hardly even understood. And many beekeepers do not even deal with it because it's very difficult to deal with this stuff. But it's amazing. I had a cat in Yugoslavia many years ago that went over the fence and injured her whole limb, and the whole limb was kind of punctured. It was kind of dangling, and it was ugly to even look. I thought she was going to die. And we took liquid propolis and applied in the whole section. It's almost like a whole, arm in a human being, let's say, imagine detached almost. And we kind of put a cast, put a bunch of propolis. In 2 weeks, she was healed as if nothing happened. And I thought she was going to die. So propolis has tons of properties, including antiviral properties. And you can read about it online, but I want you to understand how important the substance is. And most people are not aware of that or nor use it. Interesting fact, even the secret behind Stradivari violence may have been propolis. So Stradivari and Amati, Stradivarius, they were using special resin. But have you seen how they have a special glow? So scientists, through some DNA analysis a couple of decades ago, discovered traces of propolis in their varnish. So propolis might have given them glow in terms of the looks, but also special conditioning of the wood. So the wood sounds better. There are more secrets to Stradivarius, but we are not in the violin making industry, so I'm not going to tell you all this stuff. But propolis is a secret there. So I'm going to end up this lecture with a cherry tree. First, it's beautiful to think of cherry tree. There's a lot of haiku poetry in Japan written about cherry tree. You know haiku poetry? Haiku poetry is just kind of 3 lines. I saw my cherry tree and I smiled. That kind of stuff. So imagine, and there's so many paintings in Japan about cherry tree, especially when it blooms in the spring. This. In Yugoslavia, we have a lot of, everybody has fruit trees in the yard. So in the springtime, you see all these colors. When I came to the United States, this is one of the main things I was missing, colorful spring, So I want to end this lecture with you imagining cherry tree and all this bloom of the cherry tree and the fragrance. And imagine for a moment that you're going to end up this lecture going to a dreary world that is in a warlike state of something that doesn't really have to be like that. And I want you to have this image of a cherry tree and imagine that you are a cherry tree and you want to nourish yourself with the micronutrients which are here. Yes, be careful. Yes, if you have coronavirus, stay away. But that would apply for influenza too. That would apply for everything, right? Stay away. If you have a flu, stay away. We knew this for decades. We grew up like that. But you're a cherry tree. Get nourished. Nourish others. We don't have a cure for coronavirus, but we have nourishment to not have opportunistic organisms attack us. We have a solid scientific evidence that coronavirus does not attack well-nourished body or doesn't attack it effectively. And if you get it, you're going to have mild symptoms. And all this stuff will go away as every other virus. Coronavirus will probably stay for us forever in a mild form. We'll develop immunity. But let's nourish your cherry tree and of your husband and wife and a child and a neighbor, and we'll be well off. Thank you for listening. Yes, so the question was, is there alternative for people that have Hashimoto, alternative to IG, for people that have a SIBO and Hashimoto? My answer is there is no, yes, there are some alternatives, but there is no need for alternatives because the assumption that they have heard before, since this is polysaccharide, that it might, feed SIBO, but it doesn't. So this is not going to affect that. It's not going to feed bad bacteria. So you don't have to worry about it. You can say this is a very complex sugars. They do not feed bad bacteria. They are bifidogenic. So polysaccharides, including arabinogalactans, are bifidogenic. They're going to feed good bacteria, but they will not feed bad bacteria. The same thing with Hashimoto. The Hashimoto is an autoimmune condition. We have elevated antibodies. And one of the main things in Hashimoto, we have to retrain immune system. And IG is amazing for that because you're increasing cell-to-cell immunity. I would suggest balanced B8 to add, not as an alternative, but to add balanced B8. There's a lot of scientific studies about decrease of antibodies in cases with Hashimoto. And whoever posed the question, please email me that. I will send you the scientific studies on balanced B8 and antibodies. Also selenium has some effect with that. We have evidence of that as well. So I would add selenomethionine. Selenomethionine is a good form for that. Balanced B8, which is 2 forms of inositol, myoinositol, chioinositol, and add IG. Don't be afraid of that. Actually, it's amazing for people with Hashimoto. Any other questions? And of course, we have tons of SIBO protocols. So there's Vasquez protocols. I have my own protocol in SIBO. I believe there's there's a link only for this stuff. But send me email, whoever is listening, and I will send you my SIBO protocol.
I have a comment. Thank you very much. I feel like our next wave, given the toilet paper response, is going to be lining up for the vaccine. Yeah. And as alternative practitioners, how to weather that.
Well,
interestingly enough, I was just going to say Paul Offit and Peter Hotez, the same people you're quoting, say in the past when they've tried to develop this vaccine, it's actually been quite problematic and has actually had an increased death rate. I don't know how we're going to get.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that it's going to be universally mandated, and if we lose a control population, we can't even study it. How are we going to even know what it's doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, this is broadcasted on YouTube as far as I know, and a lot of people can listen to this. And I want to just post a public statement. I've struggled with this whole vaccine issue for a long time, and I'm not black and white. There is a song by Dan Byrne who said, if you put me in a box, make sure it's a big box with lots of windows and big doors. Don't put me in a box. Because there's all these boxes. You're anti-vaxxer, you're a vaxxer, There's this, somehow in this country we like polarization, right? You're Democrat, you're Republican. It's impossible to be in between, right? Nobody can even accept you're in between. I'm not political, I never was political, and when I came to this country, this was one of the things, Republican, Democrat, and I was there for a long time. I have my own opinion on both parties, and I'm not going to tell you that now, this is a political lecture, but we like polarization. The same thing with coronavirus. Every time I mention something a little bit relaxed, people say, wow, you're not scared, you gotta be scared. People like to be polarized, either totally scared or totally careless. I believe there is a place to be responsible regarding coronavirus. Yes, quarantine yourself if you have symptoms, but the same thing applies for influenza. So I believe it's possible to have a reasonable approach do we find a peace in this country, not just fight. So the same thing with vaccines. So there's this whole traditional medicine community who just completely dismisses us as anti-scientific, right? As anti-vaxxers. How about this? This is my opinion. I believe that vaccines can create certain immune system response if you put an agent and you create antibodies. I get it, and I believe in that. But I think traditional community should also look that, yes, there's more adverse effect than you think from adjuvant agents. Aluminum, mercury, they say it's a small amount, all the stuff that is added, there's a funny video on YouTube on that. Can we find a way to invent maybe something that would provide the immune system response without that. But this injuvate agent, there is a study in University of Canada, Montreal, I believe, that shows what happens when you inject mercury into the body versus ingest. And dendrites die right away, right? So the subject of vaccine, I would expand much further just vaccine itself, but looking at what else is in the vaccine, not just the virus itself. There's much more stuff to discuss there as well. But I would say vaccine itself is developed coronavirus may help some people, but may also weaken certain immune systems to many other people. But I will go back to my cherry tree. That would be the same as putting pesticides on my cherry tree versus strengthening and putting minerals. Can we consider, just consider for a second, to change your mind and to maybe strengthen your immune system first and use all these aggressive agents as a last resort versus first resort? Could we agree on that? If you can forget it, just the profits in mind, vaccine industry is very profitable. But if you can take that away and just consider that maybe we can strengthen the immune system first. How about if that works? How about if we can make the whole industry of plants organic? Maybe we won't need pesticides if the plants are strengthened. So I would say there's a lot of potential questions about the coronavirus, potential coronavirus, and I personally would choose to strengthen my cherry tree first before I would consider the vaccine. Without dismissing altogether even potential for vaccine. I'm not dismissing that, but can we ask some logical questions before that? Any other question? Do you have more online questions, Angela?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Well, you can email us questions either directly to me or through Metabolic Management. But note the link at the bottom for future lectures. There is in the middle of April lectures in several cities, and we will have monthly. This is kind of a critical update, but we're going to have systematically through all kinds of stuff through functional medicine to ask logical questions about all kinds of stuff. And just join us for that, and hopefully we'll learn and grow.
The remaining items in this, that we're supposed to listen to today, are you still going to talk about those at another time or not?
I will talk about these things in many different contexts in other times, because all these things can be used in a variety of scenarios. But you can ask me if you have specific questions. But I assume, and this link from Vasquez is going to give you a lot of stuff there, that we already know enough about, let's say, vitamin E in the immune system, right? I just wanted to show you what you don't know. Like that medical doctor that texted me yesterday, oh, I know pretty much everything about coronavirus. I have brain overload, right? So my challenge was to present something to you that you may not have heard, perspective that you may not have known. And I don't know if I succeeded, but that was my goal, right? And you probably know about vitamin A that I don't have to now spend 1 hour talking about that. And I will, in the future lectures, in many different forms, explain more about that. And N-acetylcysteine, and I use it a lot for all kinds of stuff. It is just, my goal was not that today. Yes?
Would selenium-methionine,
Yes.
the methylated form of selenium, be appropriate for adults and children as well?
Is selenium-methionine appropriate for adults and children as well? Yes, depending on of course, the age and the dosage will adjust age-wise. I don't think it's necessary for very young children, but over 12 years of age, you can already consider to supplement. Yes, absolutely.
So what kind of form of selenium would you use for under 10?
For under 10, look, I don't give my children selenium-methionine directly. I would just give them some good multivitamins. They have a small amount of all the nutrients. I do give to my children separate vitamin D, a little bit of zinc, not every day, maybe every other day or so. So there's very few individual nutrients to give them. I give them IAG as much as I can, but I don't now go it's difficult to have children compliant with all the supplements, so just very few individual nutrients and just 1 or 2 multivitamins a day. I use usually Pro Multi Plus from Biotics Research. Pro Multi Plus. Angela, go ahead.
Just briefly discuss how NAC helps.
N-acetylcysteine. I would refer that to Vasquez's research on that. It's like N-acetylcysteine is a sulfur compound. You should probably send me email. I need to send you the link of my anti-aging concoction, and I'm a big believer in sulfur compounds. And all the sulfur compounds is pretty much creating unfavorable environment for viruses to grow and replicate. All right, if there are no more questions, I will see you in April for the next lecture. Thank you for coming.